All right. Dominik Scherrer, composer of The Missing. Let's go back to the beginning. What was it that initially attracted you to this material?
The script. I got sent the script. Well, and the director, because I have a good working relationship with Tom Shankland, the director. So and then he said, "Look, I'm doing this, really interesting thriller, and have a read of the script." So I did, and it was really quite early on. It was well before the shoot, and it was a really good time to join the project, and I sort of got started on the music quite early on as well.
Mm-hmm. So what were some of your initial thoughts for some of the themes and motifs in the music?
Well, it was I had a meeting with Tom Shankland, the director, and I mean, as you may know, the Missing is about this story of this child that goes missing. It's a family, an English family. They drive to France for a holiday, and then their child goes missing, and then it's a kind of emotional thriller. How to find the child again. Mm-hmm. And so it has a few, there's a few aspects to it. One of it is the kind of thriller element, how to get the child back. There's a detective element, but there is a huge emotional impact, of course, to deal with the parents. How do they deal with the loss of the child? Plus, then the story has a kind of ripple effect as well, and it starts to affect a lot of other people as well, so it's just this one event that starts then has got this big impact on a lot of people. So Tom Shankland sort of said, this is a little bit like in the life cycle of a butterfly. It's when it maybe starts as a larvae and then it turns into caterpillar, and eventually through metamorphosis it turns into a butterfly. So it's almost this story kind of transforms in, it has the same kind of, goes through a similar metamorphosis like in the life cycle of a butterfly. So I found that quite inspiring. So I then sort of started to write these themes based on butterflies, really. Sort of like I had a kind of butterfly-ish feel to it. So it's quite nice, rather than kind of just sort of starting to write thriller music. And I almost started from a kind of lyrical point of view first. Mm-hmm. and then created these a few of these bigger themes, which could then be there is, in the end, there was only a sort of a handful of themes, maybe about 5-6 themes, but they were quite adaptable and they could be played in a kind of thrillerish way or in an emotional way.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. With these different elements, mm-hmm. How do you make it sound like it's all a part of the same show? Was that a challenge?
Well, because we didn't really have that many themes, so in the end, what really helped is to be in there very early on, to have some basically I was working with a script rather than with a rough cut or with a fine cut. And I think it helps you much more to be in the story rather than kind of illustrating something afterwards. So, and in the end, I was very careful to stick to our themes. We really sort of throughout the series, I think we had only about 6 themes, but they play in all sorts of ways. So, and I think that really helped to make it stick together. It didn't, for people, even though there is actually quite a lot of music in it, but it didn't feel like it's complicated viewing for people, because sometimes the story is complicated enough, because it plays in 2 time periods, sometimes even 3, and it can, it's kind of it's an intellectually challenging show, and I don't think the music had to make it more complicated. It had to kind of make it simpler, really.
Mm-hmm. So what was the biggest challenge for you as a composer? Was there a particular moment or theme that gave you some kind of trouble? You didn't quite know how to express this musically, thematically?
Yeah, well, I think it was because we did a lot of the work in advance, So Tom Shankland he directed all the entire series. So there was not this change of director. So when I was writing a lot of the music, he was shooting on location in Belgium, no, outside the UK. But every evening he got back, or we had a discussion about the music, which is really kind of amazing considering that he's got plenty to do when he's shooting. But it was really nice. Well, I guess what was more challenging is, I think once we got sort of our initial feel right, it was sort of the second step probably was a little bit more difficult, how then to expand from there. Once we got to actually the actual cut and the scenes, it was the music was already nicely integrated, which was great, because I think the editors got inspired by the music. They made some of the scenes longer and really kind of sit with the music. So by the time we were in the edit and post production, it was a fairly smooth process.
Mm-hmm. This is really more like an 8-hour cinematic movie. I'm curious, it being divided into these 8 parts. Do you think of it as you're composing music for a whole, or do you look at each individual episode as being its own complete story?
Well, it's always both, I think. I think that's pretty much with any series. I guess this one is more, as you say, it's a one big story. It's not episodic, really. It's one story that goes, starts from episode 1, ends in episode 8. However, each episode does have its own mood, so we always have kind of there is always a musical mood that stays with us during one episode, and there is always a more, maybe we focus more on one character, on one part, or 1 or 2 parts of the storyline, and so we may hear a little bit more of one theme, or they may all be played a little bit in a similar way as well. So because really, people watch this, once a week, so they have to be, they need, I think the viewer wants some sort of fulfillment, even if they just watch episode 4 out of 8, because they have to wait another week until they see the next one.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit more about your collaboration with Tom Shankland? You said you two had a good working relationship prior to this, so I'm just wondering what that dynamic is like between the two of you.
Well, more recently we did a lot of Ripper Street together. Ripper Street is a Victorian crime show set in 1890s London, and it has become a really successful show, and Tom Shankland was the lead director on that as well. So he got me onto Ripper Street as well, and again, I like sticking with Tom because I like his work, because basically it always turns out well. He's very good with actors, I think he's got a sort of a special feel that they come across really personal. I think he's very strong, and he's got, visually he's very strong as well. So so that's I like the result in the end, what comes out. And previously we've done other, you know, UK crime drama as well. Miss Marple, for example, together, and Jericho is another show we've done together. So yeah, it's going back 10 years, I think, our working relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and congratulations on your Emmy nomination and on your work on the show.
Thank you very much for talking to me.
Welcome.
Okay.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, you too. All right. Bye, Zach.